the record, we are not endorsing that. And for the record, he means me as one of the people who called him when I was belligerently drunk on Friday night, and he had no recollection of it today. So we don't endorse popping pills here on the show, but nevertheless, it's great to hear you're feeling better. Do you remember who took that clapper, who messed your tooth up?
Yeah, Levi, um, Levitt. Oh my God, Levitt. Oh my God, it's messing me up right now. One of the most skilled players I've played with. Not Jordan Levitt, Levy. We just called him Levy.
You don't
Yeah,
even
in
remember.
I feel like a bad guy right now, but one of the more skilled players I played with. First game overseas, we're playing in Belfast. He
Oh
goes, no
no.
one's standing in front of the net on the PP. Like, you're going to be net front PP, be a big body, banging some garbage, blah, 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 blah. So, first shift, he comes to my right. First PP comes around the top of the horn. Clapper off the inside of my knee, goal. First game, first peeper, first everything. He comes up, he goes, you do that all year, and you're going to get a lot of points on the power play. I'm like, well, that sounds like a lot different than what I'm used to. Sounds good. Next game, we're back home. Exact same scenario. Standing big in front, big screen, comes up the horn, winds one up. I'm licking my chops. Here we go. Instead, I was licking my chops off of the frickin' ice, just clap right to the face, blew up my face, broken palate, bunch of teeth, 30 stitches. It was brutal.
It's crazy. Actually, it doesn't happen more often, man. Like you watch games, and every so often you'll see a guy like literally spitting chiclets out there, and you don't wonder how these guys like a visor's the best thing you can wear. How it doesn't happen more often, but it's one of those things like we've talked about it a lot over the last couple weeks. One of those things like you don't even really think about when you go out there, but it could happen. It likely will happen. I think a lot of us out there have played with defensemen who can't keep the puck low and down and a foot off the ice, and that's sometimes what happens, right?
Yeah, for sure. Alex Levitt is his name where he
Ah,
nailed me. He felt bad. Puck got away from him. I don't know. He did stuff in practice where I was like, that is like Claude Giroux type shit, man. It was he was really skilled. He felt bad. But no, man, I mean, but clappers, like how many guys are standing in front often? Like
true.
three guys easily, straight clapper with guys getting sticks in front. I don't know why guys don't eat pucks more often. And I mean, yeah, I remember my first year in the American League, I did not wear a visor. You didn't have to. Second year, they made it mandatory. So I was at camp in Tampa, and it was the first time I had my visor on. And I was a defenseman. I was tying a guy up in front, and I turned and looked as I was taking a stick away. Whack! A huge puck mark right here on my visor. The first time I put it on. Like, how
Wow.
crazy is that? And I'm like, would that have like what would have happened there? It was crazy. And then, I didn't wear a visor, but for reasons that, I just wasn't able to do my job with it on really. But there's no real reason you shouldn't have a visor on out there. Protect your eyes. It's like the guys that didn't wear helmets back in the day. It looks silly now looking back on it.
Igor McJazz writes in, and it brings back memories. Was Fanuff blasting away? He must have thought he was slapping to a soccer net because all I remember about Fanuff, the one tees, the great heavy shot, he was always looking down. He wasn't looking at his target. It scared the shit out of me. And I wasn't on the
Oh,
ice.
dude, try standing in front of it, man. Like in practice, he would take one tease as hard as he could, and I mean, he had a great shot. He was a power play guy. Like he's skilled enough, but like it was fucking scary because he would shoot so freaking hard, and sometimes it'd be high. And we're like, no, we're not standing. We're not playing for nothing. Like, why would I stand in front of that? And the seas would just part, and we're in practice doing power play stuff, and guys just back off and just let him rip clappers because no one's standing in front of it. It was kind of dumb, and he would almost be like proud of it and look around and be like, sick, right? Sick.
Yeah.
We're like,
It's like, no,
dude,
bud. No.
we're not standing in front of that shit. But I don't know. It is a wonder how guys don't get smoked more often with pucks standing in front of the net.
I'll always remember you in the NHL. You just were one of those last guys who weren't wearing a visor, right? Like I just remember that massive, massive fucking dome of yours and that helmet coming off so quickly. It's just that you look like a different player with a visor, man. I don't even know if we have a picture of you with a visor, but just you look like a different guy, man. Didn't show those eyes off, you know?
Yeah, it looks different. That's a bad that Bauer 4000. I thought it was old school, but I figured it out within Philly with the CCM bucket, no visor. I
Yeah.
don't think you can beat that. It's about as good as it gets. But yeah, it does look odd now. It's like, where's the thing that's supposed to be on his face? And when you look at guys playing hockey back in the day, it's like, where's his helmet? How does he have all this equipment on? And then just like, oh, this last part here, don't need anything. Don't need nothing. It looks crazy looking back on now, but she was what she was.
Man, to me, like, it's still crazy. I know the game was different like 30, 40 years ago, but it's still crazy to me that they played this sport with goalies not wearing masks, barely any masks and helmets, and players wearing nothing. Like, I know it's evolved and the game's different, technology's different, but that's asking to die, I think. It really is.
It's funny, like you had no flex on the stick, straight blades.
Yeah.
It was kind of a below the knees game, right? Like
Yeah. It
that's
was.
why.
Yeah.
That's why. But I mean, it did come up. Look at that picture of Terry Sawchuk, man. His
Yeah.
face is
Yeah.
mutilated. Like how many stitches in your face until you're like, I'm gonna put something on here. And then Jacques Plante put on,
I
kind of a
know.
leather mask, and everyone probably thought he was a French pussy at the time. And he was like a pioneer of like, why won't we put something here so we don't break our orbital bones
Yeah.
and cut our faces up and lose our teeth and break our nose and risk losing our vision? Like Jesus, man. So it is wild looking back, but you got to understand back in the day, it was kind of a below the knees game with those
Yeah.
sticks, and but still silly not to just be like, we got elbow pads on because we fall on our elbows. Like, well, why not just kind of like figure something out for your face? But different time back then, man. Safety
Tough,
was
tough
not
motherfuckers.
paramount.
They
Yeah,
were
they sure
tough
were.
too, though. We think some guys are tough these days. Imagine that back in the day when you're a goalie and you're not wearing a helmet and you're blasting pucks at this guy. So props to them, but certainly a different era. At the Leafs Nation 401. If you're watching here on YouTube, please subscribe. Help us out at the Leafs Nation 401. Again, you can find this podcast wherever you find your podcast. Just search Leafs Morning Take. As we get into the DoorDash appetizer for a limited time, our listeners can get 25% off up to $10 in value and zero delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more. When you download the DoorDash app, enter code NATION25. That's code NATION25. Reminder, all in uppercase for 25% off your first order with DoorDash. Offer valid in Canada, subject to change, and terms apply. And man, oh man, coming off that weekend, we expected the star attraction to be number 88 in the Maple Leafs, and I would say he lived up to expectation. I thought it was quite poetic how the Global Series ended with a Willy Nylander OT winner against the Wild on Sunday. Your thoughts?
No kidding, man. Like, just one of those stories and scripts that kind of writes itself exactly the way that Hollywood would write it. And I mean, Leafs are hot. Willy's hot. Like, how high is his stock right now? Like,
Whew.
I know they kind of tried to get him done in the summer and they weren't close, and like time wasn't really an issue. But the one problem is, what if he just goes on absolute fire, which he's done nothing less than be on absolute fire all season long, and his stock is through the roof, man. I mean, he's got 15 apples in 17 games. That's not like no goals. It's wild, man. He's looking so good. He's looking like a superstar. And the weekend was fantastic. Like, good for Swedish hockey culture, good for the NHL, good exposure, good everything. Couldn't have wrote the script any better. I don't think it's fantastic. I just wonder, what does that do to the future of the Maple Leafs and that core four and the roster? I mean, you can't lose this guy. You want to talk about a Maple Leaf going into the free agency and haunting you forever? You let Willie Nylander go right now. He will be a bona fide superstar for a long time, I believe. And you just don't want that. You don't want to watch that. You don't want him coming into Toronto and smoking you every night. You just don't want to let that be the fish that got away.
He's like the breath of fresh air, man. Like, he reminds me of like a superstar from like the 90s where they knew they were a stud and they're going to show you they were a stud. They were going to speak out. Like Jeremy Roenick, like every third game would speak out. He would say something crazy. But to me, it's like the swagger. Like, nothing against like the McDavids and the Crosbys and some of the better players in this league, but they're kind of boring. They're kind of mundane. And then you look at Nylander, like he's got the championship belt. He's having a great time in Sweden. He's celebrating a bit, controlling the game. There's just something a bit different to him. You know what I mean? And we've thought that way since he came into this league years ago. There's this like humble confidence to him, and he knows he's the shit, and he acts like it too. I love it. Like, I don't know if you saw that quote on Friday. The media team for the Leafs, the social media team, likes to do like little quirks where they ask questions when the guys are skating out there for practice. And one of the questions the other day, who's like your favorite Swedish player of all time? Who do you think Nylander's answer was?
Myself?
It was a joke, but he said Willie Nylander, man. That it was so NBA. I said it was so LeBron James. But honestly, dude,
Yeah.
considering some of the lack of personality we have in this league, I have no problem with it. The guy believes in himself, and he's showing it right now. He's been their best player all season long.
Yeah, it's a likable confidence. It's not a prick arrogance, right? There's a
Yeah,
difference. And some guys have that confidence and it's like, F you, I'm the best and I'm sick and everyone's garbage. And it's just
exactly.
like it's so easy to hate. But his is just like, yeah, like I don't know. He's very likable. It's a
He is.
positive confidence that I don't think bothers anybody. And there's a way to do it. And it's funny you talk coaching kids and stuff like that. They don't seem to get that yet. Some kids are so, with their exorbitant celebrations and talking out. You can't even freaking walk by one of these kids these days. I got 4 goals in the week. I got 3 goals. I go win top shelf. Look at me. Look at my shot. It's just so about them. And, when you turn into one of those unbelievable players like Willy has, it's nice to see that, yeah, it takes confidence to get there, but it's the right kind of confidence that doesn't rub people the wrong way. It's not arrogance. And I think he handles it perfectly. Like you said, shows a bit of personality. He's not scared to say something. I mean, the Connor McDavids and the Crosbys, they have to be that way because they're so scared to say the wrong thing and get roasted.
Yeah.
Everything's going to get picked apart. Everything's under a microscope or magnifying glass, and you can't say the wrong thing. So you just keep it mundane, and no one can bother you. But Willie's found a way to circumvent that and be relatable, be cool, and why wouldn't you when you're that on fire, man? He's just smoking it this season.
I think you phrased it perfectly. Like he's very likable, which is weird for a player like that. But you're right. It's a confidence. Like it's not an arrogance. Like he doesn't throw it in your face that he's an absolute stud. But then you see him and you watch the way he plays the game with such flow and domination. But like you don't come across like very seldom have I heard anybody in this league be like, oh, that guy's so cocky. He's a real piece of shit. Like when's the last guy somebody said that about Willie Nylander? It's like a confidence. I don't know how to phrase it specifically, and maybe likable is the best way as you phrased it, but like there's just this soft confidence to him that he is just going to do what he wants out there. And this year we're seeing the fruits of the labor. Like he's gotten better and better and better and better every year. Let's not lose sight of the fact that last year he scores 40 goals for the first time. He's on top of the world. What does he do? He has a strong offseason, comes back even stronger this year, where this guy is looking like a bona fide superstar, right? Like, for the last 5-6 years, we talked about Nylander being like a star player in this league. But now, like he's a superstar. Like I think he has ascended into that level where I think he's in the conversation with some of the better players in this league right now.
He's playing that way, and I mean,
Yeah.
keep in mind the knock could be effort level. Remember
Yeah,
that one
true.
clip of him going for a puck and just absolutely quitting and giving up on it? You don't want to see that part of Willie. I think that may have been growing pains, immaturity, frustration. Fine, give him a pass. He's on a contract year and he's
Mhm.
absolutely lighting it up. So I think a good test will be lock this guy up for a while.
And
And
see.
I want him to be like that on year one of a new ticket, right? And I
Yeah.
think he can be. Like I said, I think that was kind of growing pains and immaturity that led to some of those blunders that he can be he's been knocked for in the past. But I mean, anything close to this level of compete that he's got going on right now is just phenomenal. And the Leafs have got him. They got to find a way to lock him up. And how that looks, my goodness, I'm glad I'm not the guy in charge of it. But
Yeah.
I don't know, man. He just seems more and more like the guy you absolutely have to keep, even if you need to make some tough decisions elsewhere.
Duke writes in with a good point. I feel Willie will be 28 next May. This could very well be his peak. He's I would agree with that. Like I think he's playing the best hockey of his career, the best hockey he will play in his career, and I think that's the point of emphasis. I think in conversations for the Maple Leafs when they talk extension with this guy is like, have you hit your ceiling? I think it's fair to say he's hit his ceiling. That's a pretty high ceiling, but like, how much better can the guy get at this point? McDavid level? I don't think he can get there.
No, no one's going to be McDavid, but if he's at this level right now, he's at 27. He's in his prime. Like you don't say
Yeah,
peak, like he's not over the hill after this year. Like let's get serious here.
yeah,
This
it's fair.
maybe this is his peak, but yeah, there's no reason physically he can't sustain it for 4 years, right?
Yeah,
And be an absolute dominant player in this league for, the first say 3-4 years of his contract that he signs after this year. So that's exactly when you want to get a guy. That's exactly when you're going to lock him up. And maybe it's a great time to do it. Timing is everything. I mean, contract
yeah,
years, you have a smoker. I mean, that's what some guys do. And yes, in 6 years, on the last couple of years of a deal, it's going to be like, oh, he's making too much for right now. Well, yeah, that's why you signed it that long ago. He earned it back then, and he wanted to lock it up long term, and that's what it takes these days to get these guys signed. So it just is what it is. But he's in his prime, no doubt. I don't like to say the word peak
Yeah.
because it means he can't get any better, and it makes me think that there's nowhere to go but down. But you can get high, and you can just sustain that and just be a dominant player for a long time.
You know what the sidebar story to me and then the most positive development of this team is that I think A, they're starting to forge an identity, and B, that Nylander line specifically. Like everybody's talking about Nylander, but Bertuzzi, Tavares, and Nylander have really, really found their way together. Where every shift they're bringing it and they're bringing it and they're bringing it and they're the ozone. They're cycling the puck. Like I think each player brings a different dynamic, and it's sort of funny all the hatred and dismay that Tyler Bertuzzi took like even 2 weeks back. Like I think he's really finding his game. And I think that's the best development aside from Nylander playing like a rock star right now is that line in general has been great.
Yeah, all the lines are starting to shape up. We
I
talked about
know.
this early in the season. Like, are we going to get some kind of a, you know, some kind of a formation of lines, and what does this look like? And are they going to be able to gel together? And it seems like that top line speaks for itself. That next line's absolutely on fire. The third line there, seems to have some with what is it, Yarny, Domi, and Nyzy. And
Yeah.
then, the fourth line, whether Reaves is in there or not, there's times where they look like they're fast and competitive and chip in offensively and can get it in the ozone and be reliable. Like it's starting to shape up as, oh, baby, we have got something rolling now. And that's great. The front end has just never been my worry, to be honest, but it's nice to see some chemistry happening. And I agree. It seems like there's starting to be an identity forming here where they can rely on.
And just to clarify, you're not that I like doing that, but it's Jason Robertson on that line. We just know how social media works, and people are going to try to rib us saying you don't know your Maple Leafs. So Robertson's on that line, as you very well know, and he's made a bit of an impact. Like even the fourth line, like obviously Ryan Reaves. We talked about this last week. Wants to get back in that lineup, but the numbers are sort of staggering when you compare the old fourth line to the new fourth line. I know it's a smaller sample size, but just in terms of the play and the style and how much they have the puck and what they're doing out there, like it is night and day where it's like, I don't know if Revo is going to be in the long-term plans here, man.
Yeah, it's tough to say, man. It just is what it is. It's a tough situation for him. He wasn't getting it done enough. His plus minus, his reliability factor was way too low. That's why he came out. And then unfortunately for him, when they mix it up, they find a pretty good formula right away. So it's not ideal for him. What he's going to have to do is stay ready and have the right attitude, still be that locker room guy, still have that leadership factor, still be the guy that the guys, see around and, that good locker room guy. Unfortunately, that's what his role is right now. And he's just got to stay ready in case he gets the tap, and he's got to go out there and do the best he can. But yeah, it's his role's kind of been, they put him on the shelf, and unfortunately what they replaced him with has been clicking really good. So it's not a great scenario for him, but he's just got to stay ready and see if he can make something happen when he does get another shot. But I agree with you. It starts to look like, maybe we don't need this guy back there, but he's always nice to have in the pocket. And like I said, good guy around the locker room for sure.
His contract's going to get buried. I just don't know how it makes any sense for the Leafs to have this guy over near $1.5 million or whatever it is per season, just stewing away, eating popcorn in your press box. Like I know he's great for the room. That's a really expensive player to be great for the room who's not actually participating actively in games. No.
Agreed. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you can't.
It stinks. Like I love the guy. He can't play hockey anymore. Like he's a great fighter and all that, but like that's all he offers.
Yeah, and again, I thought he was keeping up pretty good. I thought he was reliable, but you just can't be dash 11 in like 10 games or whatever. You just can't. It's not. You can't be in the league. You can't. You can't get scored on that often. You can't say, "Oh, we want Ryan Reaves so bad, we're willing up to give up a goal every single night to have him in the lineup." Fuck that, right?
Yeah.
Not a chance. So he's got to tighten it up. And I am convinced that that's not his standard, man. He has not stayed in the league the last 10 years while everyone else is getting passed by, and he continues to find ways on teams by being a detriment in the D zone and by being, unreliable, defensively. That's just not how he's stayed in the league. There's no chance. So he's got a bigger he's got an ability to play bigger in the D zone and to not have those minuses add up. That's a huge thing he's going to be looking for when he gets back in the lineup, I believe.
Atomic Leaf, Revo will get back in. He just won't play every game. And maybe that's the mentality they forge is like, let's not play him every game, but maybe against like a grindier type team, like right away Boston comes to mind. Maybe you throw him in there. Like if you want to impose your will and know that, this guy's not going to play. He's going to play 4 or 5 minutes, but probably get in a scrap, probably get the bench going. Maybe you think about it. But I just think it's not a dose of reality in this era. Like there's very few fighters left in this league. Of course, there's Jack Eye, but the difference with these guys and Reaves, unfortunately, is that they can play and they actually can make a difference. And I hate ripping on the guy. Like I think he's great for the room. I love the signing at the time. I'm not going to back away from that, but I think it was quite evident in the sample size we saw that he just can't keep up with the pace that the Leafs are looking to play. And then, furthermore to that point, I think where his value really, really hurt was the fact that he was playing with guys in that fourth line, specifically David Kampf. Like it's been night and day. Reaves leaves the lineup. Kampf is actually a noticeable player again, right? So I think the mix was bad to begin with, too.
Yeah, there's a few things didn't go his way. Again, it's not it just the cookies haven't crumbled in his
Yeah.
favor by any stretch. He hasn't helped himself out either. But yeah, I mean, all you can do is make the adjustments that you think you can, which they did by pulling him out, and they found something that looks better. So I think they're going to roll with that, and whether that means he's out or they bury his contract, or I guess we'll wait and see. But again, I think he's got more to offer than he showed the beginning of this season, and time will tell if he gets to show that or not.
Is John Klingberg headed to Robida Island? It has that feel where it's like he played that game again. What was it, against Vancouver? But then, like, you go to Sweden, he doesn't play. Honestly, I thought the terminology was important when everybody, around that situation was talking about how this is something that's plagued him his entire career. I think you can use sort of that moving forward when it comes to LTIR. Connor Timmins is coming off, you would think, in the next 1 to 2 weeks. I know people are already hinting at it. I would not be shocked if Klingberg ends up on LTIR and maybe doesn't play a game for the Leafs again. I don't know. It's weird to evolve to that type of situation, but I don't think we're going to see him for a while at the very least.
You know what really puts the cherry on top for me is there's tons of people that are going to say I told you so, and
I know.
rightfully so when they signed him. But we signed him. He's kind of the best demon we could get out of free agency. What do you get? 4.5 million dollars, and now he's potentially going on long term IR. Okay, but the kicker for me is most fans want that to happen.
I know. I know.
Most fans want him to go on long-term IR, want him off the books, want him out of the lineup. It would be a relief if he got taken away. After that signing, it's brutal, man. I had way higher expectations of him. I wanted him to find his way, and shame on me for thinking a guy who has not found it in a few years is going to come to Toronto and magically find his past brilliance. I mean, Samsonov did it last year in that role, and I had high expectations and thinking that he could come out of his shell and play with a chip on his shoulder and re-get his form, and he did. And I was hoping that Klingberg could do it this year again. And people who had watched him play a lot more than me are saying he's so unreliable defensively. It's not worth having the bit of offense that he'd bring to the power play and whatnot. Excuse me. And now to look at it, that a lot of people are looking, going, "Oh yeah, get him on IR, open up some room." Is it says a lot. It's sad and it's tough, but we'll wait and see. And man, with the words they are using, career, this, that, long
Yeah.
term, it's like, holy smokes, are they gonna shelf him hard and bury him? I don't know. Time will tell, but it's not a good look for a guy we had high expectations for, and now a lot of people are like relieved that he's going to be toast potentially. It's not what we were looking for, that's for sure.
Well, the thing is trying to create a cap room, and that's the
Yeah.
biggest reason why people are in favor of sending this guy to Robida Island, a term coined back in the Lou Lamoriello era. And I get it. Matt Murray's there right now, although he had surgery. We saw him on crutches on opening night, so I understand that. But it's more so about creating cap room for the Leafs to be involved on guys like Zadorov and Tanev. And I think, quite honestly, well, yeah, it's understandable. People were not, infatuated and loving the play of John Klingberg. It's more so about getting that cap space, the much needed thing this Leafs team has been looking for the last decade. And now the opportunity is there for a guy nobody even wants in the lineup. I get it, but I don't like to pile on players like that. Like, I'm sure he's going through something right now. And I give him credit to begin with. It's not for everybody to try a market like this. It was the first time he was doing so in his career. Took a chance on himself, took a chance on the Leafs, but man, he's getting eaten alive. He's not the first, he's not the last, unfortunately.
Yeah, he wasn't able to jump up to his former self like we had hoped. It's been a disappointment, and I mean, that's what I'm just kind of flabbergasted for. Is I'm kind of hoping that happens. Okay, let's remove him from the lineup. He gets paid. Get him off the books. It's like, oh dear, like that's what we're hoping
I
for.
know.
Like if he's healthy, he's playing,
Yeah.
and we're like, God, he's eating up 4.5, and he's a liability out there. We don't even want him in the lineup. Like, that's a nightmare scenario. But I mean, if you're gonna get like a Tanev or one of the D-men from Calgary, and we're gonna sign Nylander, things need to change.
Mm-hmm.
Something needs to happen. I can't seem to get the numbers to work without blowing something up, without making a major move. I can't seem to get my head around how is that possibly going to work. I know you've got Tavares coming up, but the years don't line up. He's a year late with expiring his contract, or things would look a little sharper. But it's tough, man. I know what they need. I know what they're going to try to do, but how they do it, to me, without making a huge move, I don't get how that would be possible.
Well, just try to win the Stanley Cup this year. And again, that's why they pay these people the big bucks they do, to try to figure out these calculations and all that stuff. And certainly there's a lot of money coming off the books with this Maple Leafs team this year. So certainly something to monitor over the next couple of weeks. John Klingberg's status. I know Kevin Weeks, the insider with ESPN, saying yesterday that talks could pick up again between the Leafs and Calgary once Toronto returns here from Sweden regarding Zadorov and Tanev. But again, that's a tough move to pull off at any time, namely around the deadline, but specifically here in the month of November for a team like the Maple Leafs who does not have cap space. I wonder how that works out. The other thing I wonder about, like, is the number 3 cursed in this market, man? Like, as soon as Klingberg took number 3, I'm like, man, what are you doing? You got Justin Hall, you got Dion Phaneuf, Sylvain Cote, I think back in the day, although I think he was underrated probably, but like the lineage for this number recently has not been good. I'd love to see the Maple Leafs retire it, quite frankly.
Just put her in the rafters, like upside down, or what?
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Yeah, shit. I don't know. Dion was all right for
Yeah.
the crew, wasn't it? But no, I know, seeing Halsey, when they were playing Detroit there, you see Halsey just get absolutely exposed on one of those goals. I think it was Bertuzzi that just stripped see you later, back of the net, and he's looking, what? Like, I was like, finally, that's familiar, right? Nice to be on the other side of it. But we'll see what happens on the back end, man. It was an experiment. It was the best guy we could probably get our hands on. I think we talked about that with Elliot Friedman. Maybe Trouba could have been available. Maybe looking like that would have been the better play at this point. At least
Dumba,
he has
you mean?
Dumba, sorry.
Yeah.
Dumba.
Trouba's on the radio.
Yeah. Interesting to know, man. I mean, no one's got a crystal ball, and it looks like it may have not worked out so far, but Friedman links to Zadorov and Tanev again. Fuck, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
We just need some stud D-men, man. I mean, just some good, big, strong, stay-at-home, reliable D-men. I mean, with the way they're playing here in November, to round out their roster with some bolstering on the back end, baby, it would be go time, man. It's what we absolutely need. Guys are talking about Patrick Kane and shit. Like, no. Patrick Kane's awesome. It'd be cool for all the players. Oh my gosh, Patrick Kane's on our team. Oh wow, he's in the Toronto. Let's see him in the jersey. Neat, awesome. But he's not what we need. Not even close. You don't want to spend $1. I mean, if you can get it for league minimum or something, okay, we could start to look at that. But man, it's not what we need. We have a plethora of guys like that. We need to spend some money on the back end if we want to go deep in the playoffs, not just get the neatest guy we can find. Like, come on.
By the way, I don't know if you saw this. I think it was like Thursday came out, but we had that earlier report last week that the Leafs had talked to Patrick Kane on Tuesday, but then John Shannon came back and said that didn't actually, in fact, happen. So I know Freege over the weekend did say that the Leafs are still poking around. They're interested, but I think that's the one, takeaway from Brad Treliving in his career as an executive is he seems to be attached to know the market on everything, which I love. I love somebody that's tied in. Not to say that Kyle Dubas wasn't, but it seems like he's at the forefront of everything. But I tend to agree with you. I think if you have money to spend, the back end has to be where you spend it. Because I don't, and that's the fascination for me is like every playoffs, like what's the story? It's not what you think. The Leafs can't score goals. And I think they know that, right? And you think of a Patrick Kane who's been there before. He scored massive goals in the playoffs. He's won. Like he checks the boxes of the Stanley Cup playoffs. But I tend to side with you where it's like there is a greater need, and that's adding depth in the back end. That's adding bite, guys who can play in the Stanley Cup playoffs and be effective and play that bite style type game that you need to have success in the league. And that's, the way I'm trending. Because Patrick Kane, I mean, he's a great player, not the same player coming off a serious injury. So that's where I would lean to.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it would be at the end of the day, you could just get every guy on your roster. Everyone wants that, but there's reality has to set in and cap compliance has to set in. And It is funny, man. Like, you look at this hockey team, and I agree, it needs to have the back end bolstered. But then you get into the playoffs, and I know we have trouble scoring
Scoring.
the goals. A
Yeah.
guy like Mitch
Yeah.
Marner
Weird.
kind of tends to disappear and doesn't get into the fight and the battle, doesn't lead the team the way you want. And I think I could see Willy taking control this year. I could see Austin taking a step. Sometimes I wonder about, the battle and compete level of John Tavares right now. Like, does he have an extra gear because he needs to find it in the playoffs?
Mhm.
A lot of these guys need to step up, and in the playoffs, all you can do is you got to put some trust in those guys and say, okay, I know, I don't care what's happened in the past. You need to be our guys this playoff run, and you just have to trust that they'll get it done. I mean, look at who you have there. If you can't rely on them to score goals, then what's even the point?
True. It's true. And then we thought they broke through against Tampa, and then it was sort of the same old story. They got zapped of their confidence in the first two games against the Panthers, and yeah, it was uphill from there. And we know the end of that story. But you know what's amazing? It's like we've been doing this show now for almost a year and a half, and how many times have I brought up like the trends, the themes of the Maple Leafs in the first 2 months of the season with you in the offseason? I'm like, here's how it's going to go. They're going to have a pretty decent October. They're going to get turbulent around the end of October. Then they're going to go on a November heater. So I tabulated the stats for you. They're now 5-2-1 here in November, 18-5-4 over the last 3 Novembers. Inexplainable, but I don't understand why it takes them 15 games to get going. But I will say the water's not as choppy as it was, say, like 2 weeks ago. But it seems like every year at this time here, we have that discussion. No.
Yeah, it seems to be the pattern that they go in. Why that is, I don't have a clue. Why would it be that way? There's nothing you could really point to that really stands out to making sense. But seems to be the pattern. They get their stuff figured out. Maybe you could say it's because he jumbles the lines so much, and it takes a while to get their footing. I mean, that would make sense to me. Now, what's changed in November? They've found some chemistry. They've got some consistency in the lineup as far as lines combination going. You could say that, but yeah, they definitely seem to find their stride in November. I would like to see them continue on this trend. Obviously, I want to see them winning character games, coming back from deficits, starting really, really good. I'd like to see them hold on to leads. I mean, when I watch them, I tend to think like, when they do the typical Maple Leaf thing and like look around all stunned. They
Yeah.
don't do it too much lately, but like, oh my gosh, they got a 3-goal lead and they score one and then score another. It's like, oh no, and you just know what's coming. But I mean, I think that's just the detriment of a team that's super highly talented offensively. So you're going to get your leads and get your goals, and then you're not bolstered up on the back end, so you're going to let a couple. And it just makes sense of the identity of the team at this point for them to have that. You blow some leads and whatnot, but when I start to see the season, coming to fruition and their identity gets bolstered when they're holding on to leads and being well defensively, that says a lot to me. That's a good quality that I like to look at more so than coming back from a deficit. I like to see them hold on to leads right now. It says more about the team and the direction they're going and where they need to be defensively than coming back from a deficit.
Chelch writes in, they change half the roster every year, and I assume Chelch is referring to the slow starts for this team, and that does make a lot of sense. I was going to ask you about them defensively. Like I think they have taken the turn for the better since that game against Vancouver. The sample size is relatively small, but I will credit some of these guys like Lagesson and Benoit have brought sort of a different element, and they've been steady. You don't really notice them out there, but I'm with you. I know they win that game against Minnesota, but like the glaring story for me, and maybe I'm just a natural pessimist, is that you're up 3-1 and you blow that and you find a way to come back. Now, granted, the first time against Detroit, they were down a couple goals, they stormed back, and we've seen that so often. I think we're still looking for that 60-minute effort, like pardon the cliche, but like that complete game where you watch the Leafs and you're like, holy shit, what a wagon. I don't think we've seen that so far this year.
Not yet, but you're I mean, it's easy as a fan who wants it so bad to just expect that every night and be like, you guys do that every night. But do you know how dominant you have to be to rip off like what we would call that's a 60-minute effort? You just have to dominate the game from puck drop to the end buzzer, and that doesn't happen. There's another NHL team over there throwing their best at you too, so it's going to come in waves. And you could say, oh, we didn't finish the first period very well. Well, the other team was there and they took some momentum for a little while. And, you got to expect that a 60-minute effort doesn't mean you absolutely dominate start to finish, but can you handle their pressure, the times where they're putting the pressure on, can you weather that storm? Can you regain momentum? Can you frustrate them and not give up too much? You know they're going to put the pressure on at certain parts of the game. That doesn't mean you're not playing your 60, but how do you handle it and how do you respond and how do you get the momentum back on your side and steal the pressure back? And they've been pretty good at this year, different ways, and no one's perfect, but I think the building blocks are being put there. And like you said, we're on this little November heater right now, and whether history repeats itself or not, I don't really look at that stuff. Like was just mentioned, it's a different team, a half a different roster, right? So I mean, you can look for patterns and say, oh, that's interesting, but it doesn't mean a lot to me. I think they can continue playing this way, continue building, and like we talked about so many times, go into the playoffs, full steam ahead with their game in order and ready to rock.
This week's player to watch is presented by Covered Bridge Potato Chips. I'll go first. I'm going to go with Jake McCabe, but maybe a bit off the radar, but it's more specifically because the Leafs visit Chicago on Black Friday in the afternoon coming up this week. That's their next game. And McCabe's making his return to Chicago. And quietly, I think he's been pretty steady since coming back from that groin injury. Who do you have?
I like it. I'm just looking at the defense. I'm looking at the back end. Do we get back from injury here?
Timmins.
Brain fart. Yeah, Connor Timmins. I'd like to watch him. If he's going to come back in, and I look over his stats and his potential and where he's at, and I think, man, this is a guy that we could really not realize how bad we're missing him. If he takes a stride, it's tough to do coming out of injury, but he's a player who could take a step. He's at the age where he's going to start to really wrap himself around his position and develop and hit his stride and his peak. And I think that if he can get back in the lineup, get some confidence. Sometimes guys just come out of nowhere off of injury, and it's like, wow, whatever that was did them good, and they have a new outlook. And I'd like to watch him and see if he can get back this week and really hit his stride. He could help out that back end so much.
And again, that's this week's player to watch is presented and is covered by Covered Bridge Potato Chips. Go to coveredbridgechips.com and follow on Instagram at CB_chips. And I did bring a couple of bags for my flight over here to Orlando here in Florida. I'm actually in Jacksonville, but for my flight, I had a couple of bags of Covered Bridge, and they just hit the spot, man. They're phenomenal.
I've been smashing them. I grabbed some of my set chips there and was smashing them. I'm going through the boxes going, man, I got to make sure I got enough left for the set here, but they are phenomenal.
I could only wonder what Friday is going to entail, man. Like, I don't know what you want to call it. It's like an extra trap game because the Leafs are coming back from overseas. And on top of that, they lost to Chicago. The Hawks are playing terribly. Like, everything's aligning for like a dump effort where the Leafs take a dump on the ice. But hopefully that doesn't happen. It's a back-to-back. They got Chicago Friday and a Kyle Dubas revenge game on Saturday in Pittsburgh. Can't wait for that one either.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. They get their little break here and all the festivities. They're going to get the time change sorted out, the jet lag sorted out. They'll have a week of practice, get acclimated to their normal surroundings again. And I mean, God, trap game. I'm sick of that shit. Like, let's go.
You hate that shit, eh?
Smash that team, man. You're a better team. Wipe them off the slate. Say, get out of here. You're not ready for us. And then move on to Pittsburgh. They need to be more mature than that, man. We can't have that. I'm going to put money on them to win. Don't care what the odds are. I want them to come out and really prove, like, sorry guys, you're not in our league right now.
I hope so. That's all. Fingers crossed. The Hawks have been playing like shit. I think they've lost 5 in a row, by the way. You could be Columbus. Your boy in Columbus got benched over the weekend, Johnny Gaudreau. You see that?
Yes. Same with Patrick, man. They're both getting scratched. It's nightmare city over in Columbus. Not a good look for anybody.
Again, not to get back, not to give these guys a pass, but who started all this? Mike fucking Babcock and all that bullshit. That team was doomed. Not to say that they're going to win the Stanley Cup this year, but that team was doomed the way their season started. And now, like, it's a fucking blaze out there, man. 9 losses in a row. They got Liney watching from the press box. Like, it's an unmitigated disaster over there, man.
It's not good. I'm not a big Johnny Gaudreau fan. I think he's too damn soft in the first place. But Patrick Laine seems to have some like mental stuff, holding on to his confidence, and seems to have some confidence problems. You can see it on his face and in his eyes, and he's just not who he was at the top of his game in Winnipeg. But I don't know. It's tough when you got to put a guy in a press box to send a message and try to fix him and figure it out. It's just you got to take a couple steps back before you can start moving forward, and hopefully they're on the path to that. It would be nice to see him playing a little better. I don't like it when guys really flounder and there's big storylines about how bad a guy's doing. It always sucks. I like the William Nylander narrative a lot better.
It's pretty crazy that we're like 15 games into this season, and both Johnny Gaudreau and Jonathan Huberdeau have been benched for long periods of times by their respective teams. And again, that there needs to be like a 30 for 30 in like 10 years, like a Netflix series on that trade, because and everything that went around that with Florida, with Calgary, and of course with the Columbus Blue Jackets, Gaudreau electing to say, "Hey, I'm going to go to Columbus and I'm going to try to win in Columbus." It's like, yeah, buddy. Good luck. Brought to you by Betano, the 2023 EGR winner for both the Best Sportsbook Operator of the Year and Best In-Play Sports Operator Awards. The game starts now. So a weird slate this week because of American Thanksgiving. There's no games on Tuesday, no games on Thursday. There is a Ryan Johansson revenge game I'm looking at tonight. So Colorado's into Nashville. I think if you want to hit some point props, maybe an anytime goal if you want to go that far with Ryan Johansson, the shot prop, a much maligned exit, I would say, out of Nashville. And I think he finds a way to get on the scoreboard. And I like Colorado to beat the Nashville Predators tonight.
Nice. Yeah, why not? You seem to do well with the revenge games, and they do seem to pan out a lot, and it seems to be a storyline when guys go back to their old team. So I'd tell you on that, and there's reason to believe that is a good bet.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know you'll be watching intently tonight as Tampa hosts the Boston Bruins. Again, I was in Tampa over the weekend for that Edmonton-Tampa game, and talking to people around there, they can't wait for Andrei Vasilevsky to come back. But man, every night I watch the games and the box scores, and like Boston, keeps winning and winning and winning. They just fucking hammered Montreal over the weekend. It's just a shitty feeling covering a Leafs team who's starting to pick up steam, and they're not gaining ground because Boston just wins and win. Like, again, I would not be, it's very unlikely to repeat. And maybe Jeremy Swayman has the upper hand right now on Linus Allmark, but it wouldn't be outlandish to suggest the Boston goalie wins another Vezina. Jim Montgomery wins the Jack Adams this year. Like, what the Boston Bruins are doing, losing their first and second line centers and not really adding, is insane to me. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, it's wild, man, what they're doing. It's you just take that roster and plop it in Toronto.
Crazy.
Are they the same? Are they gonna rack those points, man? Like,
I don't know.
I don't think so. It's well coached or lightning in a bottle. I don't know what the hell it is, but it's wild to watch. They are this dominant team. Doesn't matter who's with them or who they lose or at. And it's like, geez, man, they're just a winning machine. And I mean, I think we've gotten a little bit accustomed to not really standings watching, not really caring about what's going on, because it only matters like come down to the playoffs. You look at Florida take out Boston last year. You know, anything happens once you get into a playoff series. So I get why we're not really paying attention to it too much, but it is interesting to look around and say, holy smokes, you know, you get Vasilevsky back there with Tampa, and that division all of a sudden is something that we are maybe supposed to kind of almost cakewalk through this year. Doesn't look like it's going to happen, but I don't think it's going to matter all that much either. It matters about what's going on in the playoffs.
And I know Robert in this chat is backing it up. He's like, Nick, that's an every year thing too. I agree. And that's why I said it. I don't know if you remember back in September, I said the shittiest bet you can make if you're looking to bet on a future for the Leafs is having them win the division. It just doesn't happen. It's happened once in the last 20 years. I think Pat Quinn is the last to do it. And it was in that phony fucking North Division year where they were way better than everybody else in that division. Then they lost to the Montreal fucking Canadiens that year. It was embarrassing. So, like, I don't think it's a good bet, nor do I really care if they win the division. But it's crazy to me that the Boston Bruins are the team everybody wants to count out. Nobody wants to believe in them. And just every night, you know what kind of effort you're going to get from them. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that one tonight as well. Boston and Tampa. And as I always like to say, the regular season doesn't matter anyway, right? So, for the Leafs.
Yeah, it's interesting. What was I going to say? What was the Northern Division there during COVID? Did they take that one down or no?
Yeah, they won the division in the regular season.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah,
it's
so that's
dumb.
It's interesting, man. Yeah, it's a tough division. It's like, you know, the Jays are in that division with, you know, the Yanks and the Bo Sox, and it's always tough to compete. You have to have a really good team to win it. But yeah, like you said, doesn't matter. We don't care about that. We just want to get full head of steam going to the playoffs, and anybody can beat anyone, as was clearly marked by the wild card team beating the almighty Boston Bruins last year. What's scary is you got to think Boston's learned their lesson and they're going to go in fully prepared to the playoffs. And it's like, good Lord, I doubt they're going to drop another egg there unless there's some kind of playoff curse going on.
If anything, I think it shows you that you don't want to win the President's Trophy. You don't want to win the division, right? To have that type of year, how unbelievable it was, and to lay a stinker, and for them to be up 3-1 in that series and lose to Florida, it just shows you get in, anything's possible. I want to give a shout out as well to Tyler Bertuzzi. You talk about revenge, scored a revenge goal on Friday against Detroit, which we love to see. And all those people burying Domi, burying Bertuzzi, I haven't been able to find their tweets or activity on social media the last couple of weeks. So for everybody who discounted Brad Treliving 2 weeks ago, how he was burning this team to the ground, it's funny how quiet they've gotten. But we'll leave the conversation at that for today. The Maple Leafs, no doubt, feeling pretty damn good coming back from Sweden 2-0. Willy's got that fucking championship belt attached to his shoulder, and rightfully so. He's an absolute rock star. Looking forward to Friday. Should mention as well, Matthew Barnaby's going to stop by the show tomorrow, and something tells me you guys are going to have a fun little chat. Barnaby was as big an agitator as you can find back in the day, and I do believe he's a firm believer in the Maple Leafs, so we're going to get his thoughts coming up tomorrow.
Yeah, I love it. There's a cool guy you could pick his brain for. He'll be a good interview. Looking forward to that for sure.
Thank you to everybody in the chat at the Leafs Nation 401. If you're watching here on YouTube and are not subscribed, I don't know what you're doing. Help us out at the Leafs Nation 401. Search Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcast as well. We'll pop up. Everybody in the chat, you guys are fantastic. I know there's a bit of a skirmish, which we love to see sometimes here in the chat. People going at each other. Let's all be friends. Let's all cover the Maple Leafs. Let's do our thing. Many thanks as well to producer Aaron. For Jay Rosehill, I'm Nick Alberga, and we'll talk tomorrow. Take care.
Thank you for watching Leafs Morning Take. Hit that subscribe button and never miss a show. And for more, visit theleafsnation.com. TheLeafsNation.com. If you don't know how to spell the Leafs Nation, you know what I mean? But hey, sometimes you never know.